3 and 2 and 1.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining me on this Noob Hammer versus episode 3. We're here with Brad Chester, who I was thinking about an intro for you. Man, myth, legend, I think is accurate, but it's overdone. So,
I go with some guy, some
yeah.
old random dude.
If you haven't heard of Brad, you are a new player, and that is great, and that is what my channel is all about. Brad is one of the most well-known competitive players in 40k. He just came off of a win at a Premeasure at the Rocktop GT this last weekend, and he was playing his Hail of Doom AeldarI, which is a perfect transition into what this video series is all about, which is how can we as Deathwatch and Grey Knight players defeat various factions out there, or at least how can we give them a good run for their money and an excellent game. So Brad, thank you so much for being on my show.
All good. The funny thing is that answer to that question is not wildly different, like significantly different for the Grey Knights and the Deathwatch.
Right, which I thought, I know that you've done tutoring and coaching for a long time, and I know that you've played both Grey Knights and Deathwatch. So
Yep.
I am super stoked to hear how this goes. All right, well, I've got a little guideline here. I want to remind everybody, please ask us your questions. That's why we do these live. We enjoy the community interaction, but let's go ahead and start with the question I ask everybody on this show. What is the current place of the AeldarI faction in the meta right now?
Tyranids, Tau, AeldarI is the ranking right now.
That's S?
I think they're all S. Tyranids are like laughably better than everybody else. Then there's Tau, which it's a little bit of scissors paper rock though, because I think that Tyranids is number 1, but I think Tau plays really well into Tyranids because of all the damage they can put out. And then Eldar plays specific builds into Tyranids, and then they play very utility into everything else. So they have like, their win rate's good, but it's not top because of the fact that there's so many working parts, and they're a bunch of T3 guys that have mass saves. So if you mess up with Craft World, you can just get peeled off the board. But they can play against everything. So it's fun. it's a weird thing in that, well, it has the tools for everything, but it can just lose. If you just find yourself standing in the open at any point in time, you're like, well, that's going to be bad. So
yeah, it feels like a faction that's definitely like, I heard the old adage that the game's actually won in the movement phase, and it seems like the movement is really what will eke you out all those wins. So
I am freezing up here, and I don't know why, but it's at least I'm freezing in really awesomely looking poses.
You are, and I don't know why either, but there it goes. It's good again.
And I really believe in the question on the wall. He goes, and with the skill ceiling of Eldar, is the potential to be the strongest army in the hands of the talent to play? Yes. I think it's got I think it may have the highest potential because it can play anything and it plays in every phase, and it's probably the fastest army in the game. So
That's awesome.
It gives problems to everybody. It can be frustrating to play against, but it also can feel like so easy. Sometimes you have games against Eldar that you just blow them off the board, and then you have sometimes you play against Eldar and it feels you can never ever touch them. So it depends a lot on board and mission and everything else. So
yeah, those are the games that I want to talk about, where like where I just get blown off the board. Because I've definitely had I've had both those games. I played in an RTT where a guy was doing Wraith Guard spam, and I just kind of stayed away from them and blew them away from a distance. And then I played Hail of Doom with just thousands of the shuriken cannons, and I died miserably. So, you know.
my rose-colored glasses, by the way, these are colorblind glasses, but they also have blue blocker, which means that this light that's staring me in the face right there doesn't instantaneously make me have a headache, which almost
Oh,
everything does.
that's oh no, that's right, old man Brad. Right?
As old man problems, yes.
Yeah.
Uh,
Uh,
by the way, Barath is laughably an auto take in every AeldarI list.
is
It's
he
not
okay? Yeah.
it's not a good question. He's OBSEC. He's OBSEC and can bounce until they change how he interacts. He's an auto take. The counter way is to set up basically he can do damage. But the thing is his damage isn't like a lot, to be perfectly honest. He's got 4 shots at strength 6. He's got 6 attacks at strength 5. Like he's never banging things out. He's just irritating to you because he does that every game for 5 turns usually. The thing is that make it set up, accept the fact that you're going to get nickeled and dimed by Baharoth, and just don't give him places to go. Because typically, what you're doing at the top level with Baharoth is you're stealing objectives and stuff. Like especially late game, when you go 3-4-5, I'll shoot my entire army, shoot Baharoth, and then just take Baharoth and steal one of your banners down or something like that.
So
Uh,
so this is a channel where we have a lot of new players. So could you explain what Balharoth does that
makes him
makes
so
him so
unbelievably
special?
annoying.
Yeah.
So he's got 2 different things. So Baharoth can jump once a turn, or once a battle round, which means that I can either shoot and then literally pick him up and put him anywhere on the board like a deep strike, instead of what's called battle focusing, which is going D6 inches. Or after the consolidate phase, instead of consolidating, I can do the exact same thing, which means that if I have range, I could shoot Baharoth, and then I could charge something, and before you get to swing back, then I get to pick him up and leave. So effectively, I get free shots and free attacks every single turn. So he's basically everybody hates. That's not my good thing. Well,
You can
that's
toe in on him though, right?
you can't, because they basically put out the rule, because in the main rulebook we were actually doing it wrong for a while, because
Uh-oh.
I thought the same thing, but then they argued, because in the book it said, in the main rulebook it says, even if you make a 0-inch consolidate, you are still considered to have consolidated. And his rule says, in place of consolidating, pick
Oh,
him up.
I see.
So again, when you're using like student of history or show stealer, the ones where you can make a 6-inch move in any direction, they'd still have to be able to make a move. He
Right.
doesn't have to make a move because it's still a 0-inch move.
Gotcha.
So he's just irritating.
So what do you think is one of the biggest strengths of AeldarI then?
It's speed,
Just
speed,
speed?
speed,
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 and
speed, speed.
speed and volume.
Mm,
Like the list I just took had 30 Dire Avengers, 15 cannon bikes, just a bunch of characters on bikes so they can move 16, and 22 if they flat out. So
wow.
the army, the army can move, and when you're playing someone, you have to, as a marine player, anybody power armor wise, you kind of have to be planning at least 1.5 ahead. You can't just plan next turns, because of the fact that a good player will literally just abandon the objective that you push too hard on. Like if you just take 1,000 points of your army and go to any one spot, I'll just leave. Yeah, I mean, I'll just go 22 away
Yeah.
and go, well, that's you live there now, so I'm not going to fight into your teeth, so I can always just decide I'm going to leave. My AeldarI battle cry is not in the face. I'm just, I don't want to get shot.
On the face.
Morning everyone. But
Yeah.
it's a big deal that I do a lot of fight. I'll continue to do it. I do a ton of fight references and sport references. If you know boxing or anything else, you have to cut off the ring. Basically, you can't chase a fast
Mhm.
army. You have to anticipate where they're going to be next. And sometimes you can just force that. So it's important to also, and if anybody's ever watched me, premeasure,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
You have to know where your opponent. I spent so much more time measuring my opponent's moves than I models and where they can go than I do that. Like if you ever
I
see me at a stream, It looks like I'm trying to play the other person's army because I'm literally figuring out where they can go.
I have heard you say that so many times that I like hear it in the back of my head when I'm playing. Premeasure, premeasure, premeasure.
You just have to. It's such a big deal, man. Like over the weekend, I got in a vicious match. I was playing in the semifinals. It ended up being a fairly easy go because of the fact that it was player placed terrain. I pre-measured everything out. I saw exactly how far he could go, and I made it so he couldn't get angles on me. And I kind of was able to stage my entire. Now I had a great piece of terrain, but like I was able to just
Kills.
stage, my like half my army in the middle, and the tile player had to make all these ridiculous moves that he didn't want to,
Yeah.
just because I know exactly where he can go. And you just don't get shot. Not getting shot is the best way.
Yeah.
Everybody's too greedy. I tell
It's
you right now.
that is a thing that I find that I have struggled with since I started playing is that I want every single model from my unit to be doing maximum stuff, usually shooting or fighting all the time, and I will take big brain
Uh,
plays. And by by big brain I mean small brain, like monkey brain plays to try to get everything in there, you know. So,
I
oh, yep. Go ahead. But we do have a lot of great comments, so
let's rock into him.
yeah. So,
I'm in.
Mr. Timothy here is actually transitioning perfectly into my next question. So I was going to ask you, what are the most common lists that we're seeing right now? And then also, since I know the answer is Hail of Doom, so let's explain what that is, and then what you think might be the top Eldar list if Hail of Doom does get nerfed somehow.
I hope it gets nerfed. I hate it. I actually hate playing Hail of Doom.
Really? Okay.
Uh, well, here's the reasons. Hail of Doom, Tyranids exist. Hail of Doom is a must because of that for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because Hail of Doom, excuse me, Hail of Doom, which is every 6 to hit is treated as a 6 to wound automatically. So you skip the wound phase, and you are now either AP3 for shuriken weapons or Avenger catapults, which are the Dire Avengers. You're now AP4. And the second part of that is Masterful Shots, which I ignore all cover. So any cover bonuses you get, I ignore. So it's a big deal because you're putting huge AP down on people consistently with no cover saves. Now, I love this for the damage, and because Tyranids exist, it's the best because the damage literally spikes. I did a math hammer of it. It's just against big things, it's literally 100% increase in
Wow,
damage.
that's
Yeah,
insane.
well, because you look when you're shooting like T8s and things of that nature, you just
Yeah.
your damage just goes so ridiculous,
Yeah.
especially when you're talking about strength 4 weapons from Dire Avengers that just skip that whole wound phase, and then all of a sudden it's AP4. So that is why this list exists. You know what I mean?
So,
However,
so Hail of Doom is army wide. It's not like a buff given to one unit. It's just
oh
army
no,
wide.
every shuriken weapon in your
Oh,
entire army gets
did not
that.
did not realize that.
And then
Good to
the
know.
army gets masterful shots. The whole army ignores cover. It doesn't matter what you're shooting. So it's a big deal on that, and your damage is so spiked, and that's why it's the number one at that. However, my favorite, and I was playing it until semi recently, was Uthway, um, which I never bothered to put the L in there. Same reason I say woofs. So the apparently my home language is one that I don't speak very well, but the
Man, I'm a stutterer, so I get you.
you're,
I don't
you're like
speak it well at all.
between the two of us, we'll get a couple words right.
Yeah,
It'll all work out.
it'll work out eventually. Exactly.
But with Uthway, you get 6 up invuln on the whole army. You get 5 up feel no pain against mortals. You get 1 reroll, and you get +1 on the first cast of every caster. So
And
it
you get
just has
Eldred, right?
and then you get Eldrad, who has three spells instead of 2, and he also gets full rerolls for all his failed casts.
That's
So
amazing.
you get tons of utility, but you get less damage. And in the meta right now, it's one of those things where I would rather be playing Uthway because it has so much more to offer. Your casting phase is more consistent. You
Yeah.
get that feel. I mean, just taking 33% of wounds, of mortal wounds, and saying no, it's a huge deal. You play Grey
Yeah.
Knights. It's a
Yep.
big deal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Of doing that. So, and then you've got a better target for to the last and things of that nature if you go with Eldrad. But again, your damage shifts down. And while I still have to deal with 170 point big monsters that are, transhuman with influence, it's just you just need to be able to kill them.
Yeah. So, all right. So then to cut that down to a quick answer, you hope Hail of Doom gets nerfed because Uthway seems more fun to play, or is more fun to play.
Plays way more fun to play, and it's more your utility is through the roof.
Yeah. And you think that if Hail of Doom is nerfed, then Uthway will take the next top spot.
Yeah, and then I think Beotan will probably be right underneath that because
And
it has auto 3-inch battle focus, which would actually save me a zillion CP a turn because most of the CP I spend is for moving. So
yeah,
I spend a CP a turn almost always for the auto 6 battle focus. I spend 2 a lot for fire and fade in the same turn. So I spend like 3 CP a turn
yeah.
just doing those two things. So it burns a lot of my CP. So that one's pretty decent too.
So that's a all right. So going back to what we were saying at the beginning, where the game is won in the movement phase, you are spending your CP on movement as well, and it's because you're so like fragile, right? You
Yeah.
don't want to have anything hanging out. Like no
Oh,
free shots, no
if you
free
could
shots.
just, and that was what I was saying when we were talking about that. You're saying you wanted to make everybody the most efficient, but it's not though, because I would rather shoot 2 things. I would rather kill 2 things than 4 things. If by killing 2 things, I don't get shot back, or I get shot back by a very limited amount of your force.
Right.
Because I see people constantly moving up, killing so much stuff, but you're just standing in front of your opponents. You just get killed. You lose tons of your firepower. But I'd rather just flank, shoot, especially when I'm playing Eldar, because like battle focus, you know what I mean? But like
Yeah.
shoot this one little flank and just kill something, and then you just don't have anything left to shoot at. It's also frustrating for your opponent. You get
Yeah.
to tell you, I know it's weird to talk about psychological edges in a toy game, but like if something of yours got killed and you don't have targets in response, it's frustrating. You know what I mean? So then you
Yeah.
start being overly aggressive a lot of times. So it's a big deal.
It's definitely something that I'm struggling with. And when I master myself and I hold back and that ends up working, like I go for a turn 3 alpha strike and not like a turn 2 or whatever, it feels really good. Like when you've like mastered yourself, you're like calm down, take it
It's a
easy,
big deal
and now go.
when you're playing Imperio, you're playing power armor. Unless you're playing sisters, you are probably inefficiently trading because your data sheets are worse. Every one of those guys got point nerfed. You know what I mean? A lot of your things got point increases and stuff like that. So when you're going into all of the newer books, they have cheaper shit than you do. So
Yeah.
like you have to watch out for how the trades go. And that's why it's important not to go in super early and just randomly go in. You
It's
have to go because a lot of times you might get early game and then all of a sudden you have no cardio and turns 4 and 5, you have no models and then you just
yeah.
lose.
Yeah. That's a hilarious way of describing that. You ain't got no cardio. Like you can't get up there. You can't get there.
Yeah, it's just a
Uh,
big thing on that. Um,
so go ahead. It sounded like you were just about to answer a question
yeah, I'm looking
from
at the
chat.
wall. Do you think the potential change in CP generation will rein some of the other shenanigans? Actually, it'll make it way easier for me. Uh, because of the fact that I'm pretty grounded on my CP use. Like I do not like rerolls unless they like when I say rerolls, I mean like rerolling a wound, a save, or whatever. I typically almost never reroll one of those unless it's a big unless it's point determinant. Like if I make the save, I take an objective or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So have the change in pregame, I actually spent very little pregame. Like for the tournament I just went to, I bought 0 upgrades. I took my one warlord trait, my one relic,
Yeah.
and I don't goose my guys up because I use so much CP. But the thing is, I do CP like very per turn. So if we get that half whatever they're doing, of course they didn't tell us the exact rule, which is not irritating at all.
No,
Uh,
not at all. Why would that matter?
but if they're giving you 2 instead of 1, and I generate 1 with psychic power, I spend 3-ish plus a turn. If I'm getting 3 a turn back, that's actually perfect for me. I'll stage because I typically don't do a huge turn of it.
Night.
Occasionally I
Okay.
do.
Yeah.
If I do a redeploy, a phantasm plus an Eldritch Storm, occasionally I drop a giant amount of CP,
Yeah.
but most games I don't. It's more of a threat.
Yeah.
I Eldritch Storm twice in the entire tournament of 8 games. So
Can you tell us what? I mean, I don't even know what Eldritch Storm is.
Eldritch Storm is an orbital bombardment, basically, but it
Oh.
happens in the same turn. So in the command phase, off one of my Farseers, I choose a point 24 inches away, and then it's a 6-inch off that, so it's a 12-inch pie plate. And then it's D3 mortal wounds plus 1 for every Farseer that does the psychic action. So
Oh.
I can
Okay.
do, so you can do,
Interesting.
if you have 3 Farseers, you can get D3 plus 3. I run 2, so I can get D3 plus 2 to everything. But it actually is normal bombardment that works because it happens then at the beginning of the shooting phase. So I do it in the
Huh.
command phase. I cast the psychic action in the psychic phase into the beginning of the shooting phase. It goes off. So
Okay. So.
it's once a game. It's just like an open bombardment. It's 3
Oh.
CP, but
It's
it works.
so it's like a long range vortex of doom that all the the far seers can kind of like join in on.
Right. Kind of.
Okay. Okay. That's neat. I mean, like, sounds
It's
frightening to
it
have that
can.
happen, but it's neat.
The thing is like I said, I don't use it that often, but against certain armies like Tau and Tyranids, occasionally I'll use it just because of depending on your deployment too. Like if you're board quarter deployment, I mean at the edges you're only 13 inches away from each other, so I can put a pie plate super deep. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But most of the other times it's just not worth it because you're getting 3-ish units maybe. You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
don't want to spend 3 CP and maybe 2 CP to redeploy at that point in time. But it is nice to have it in your back pocket also because I'll tell my opponents I have it, and now you have to deploy differently. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Maybe you
Now they're
don't put,
more afraid of you. Yeah.
well, yeah, maybe you have that perfect piece of terrain too, like in your deployment zone. That would be excellent for staging your entire army. And then I'm like, well, if you deploy there, I'm going to hit the army with mortals. Now you're, oh no, I got to be somewhere else.
Yeah.
So,
Mind games.
yeah, I
Uh,
mean,
I,
it's,
I I do want to circle back to JP's question about movement hindering tactics, like a thunderfire cannon or powers that half or reduce your movement speed. Because there is ghostly bonds, which is a power that Grey Knights have that reduce your movement, and then there's also gosh, what is the Oh no, there's a the neural void is the Deathwatch power that forces you to charge like the closest target. It doesn't sound like your list does a lot of charging. That's what like the whole not in the face thing. Uh,
I do have some hand to hand, but it's all counter hand to hand. I have double banshees and scorpions.
yeah, okay, gotcha. So I mean, you will be charging, but like
Yeah,
how?
it's big on that. I The problem is if you get close enough to use those, sometimes they don't work as much. Like I love a lot of the psychic powers that and or abilities that have movement and stuff like that. They're huge, and I do like them quite a bit. But I would probably focus more on having units that move block.
Mhm.
Speeders, units, whatever. Move blocking is typically just better than trying to get into range and hoping that a psychic went off or doing a
Fair.
Thunderfire. And I have a bunch of Thunderfires, but man, they got nerfed into another dimension.
I think
And
I think Ghostly Bond's range is only like 12 inches too, and I still think you have to see the target, which
yeah,
makes it really hard to hit against Eldar.
right.
Because
You're
they're
trying to.
hiding.
Well, that's the thing is that you either you're trying to do that against Eldar, you're trying to do it against Tyranids, or you're trying to do that against Tau, and all of a sudden, you know, Tau just shoot you in the face, and
Mhm.
they're like, I don't care that I moved half. And those other two armies, well, I don't want to be that close in the first place against Tyranids. So it, I like the idea of them, but I like the idea of just having units in your army that are just literally responsible for taking it to the face and just blocking movement.
So
Especially with all the knights and stuff out there, you have to again premeasure, but like literally I think people underestimate how easy it is to block something like a knight or a maliceptor. All these kind of big base models literally measure from the back of their base, and well, especially with maliceptors, they can't walk over you in the first place. But knights measure from the back of their base. They still have to end their move an inch away from you, so you can just measure like whatever their movement is. Typically, you can steal 7, 8 inches off that movement now. And a lot of the knights move less than they used to. They move 10 and 8 instead of 12 and 14.
Oh, they're slower than they were. I have not played against the new books at all. So
Well,
or
the
the new book.
new little ones got faster. The big knights got slower.
Okay,
So
very cool. Got lots of questions, which is awesome. I love to see folks
fire them up. I'm ready.
interacting here. So we have for Deathwatch. How would you rate an anti-infantry Corvus Blackstar and missile launchers? So you're thinking the double assault cannon, and then I assume the rockets with the blast that have a lot of shots into like strength 4, or are you talking about the?
I know
Okay, yeah,
less than that.
yeah.
I would like Snakes definitely wants Corvus Black Stars to be better because he
Me
owns
too,
4
man.
of them. But
Oh,
they're still he bought a lot of them basically. Not a lot as in a lot. He bought somebody sold his
yeah.
Deathwatch and had a lot of 4 of them. So the Corvus Black Star for me, unfortunately, is a flyer, and can always be seen at that point in time. I wish it needs to cost less, to be perfectly honest. It's GW doesn't know what to do with actual flyers because the flyer mechanic is broken.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime a flyer is actually appropriately costed, it's broken because the flyer mechanic is broken. That's why they made it down to 2. I don't know what to do with this mechanic. You can only take 2. Figure it
Yeah.
out.
So, oh man, there's so much there that I want to talk about. But can you explain to us like what about the flyer mechanic and is broken? And when you mean broken, you mean broken
Okay,
good, broken bad?
you're about to get a Brad rant.
Please, I love the Brad rants. It's why I tune into Art of War.
Having a mechanic that can't be interacted with, but you interact with me is total shit. The fact that you can take a big based model and just park it in front of my army, and then I can't move there, but I can't touch you because you're in the sky.
Oh, I
Your
see what
shadow sometime makes it so I can't go anywhere. It's total shit. Yeah, I mean,
okay.
why it? Yes, I can move over your base, but you can literally again, you just pre-measure and go, well, how far does this unit move? Cool. Well, I'll just make it so the entire unit can't get over the entirety of my base. So, especially if you're playing infantry-based armies and stuff, you know what I mean, where you can just
Yeah.
and they can't, or if you don't have enough fly, or all of a sudden you're just standing there going, hey, guys, we got to wait here. Why? Because up in outer space, there's a plane, and I don't want to cringe on his shadow. Like what? That's the dumbest shit I've ever heard with.
Yeah.
Can we assault it? No, he's in space, so we can't move here. Can't move here, but we can't do anything about it either. And also, I know that that's a
It's
spaceship, but the best weapon against it is a flamer.
yeah, it's also it's just one of those abstract things from, it being a tabletop game. Like it is still weird to me lore wise or whatever, like realism wise that oh yeah, my giant blob of conscripts is like engaged in melee with one witch. So just don't shoot over there at all. Just don't. Like no,
Yep.
just shoot them all. you don't care. You have tons of conscripts.
Yeah,
But
you're about to take some basilisk shots right in the middle there. We'll kill
yeah, yeah.
we'll
You'll
kill we'll kill some of our guys, but we'll kill them too.
yeah, exactly. So I like how Alexander actually reminded me of a point that I wanted to make about the move blockers. Deathwatch, like you said, were very expensive, and then the AOR specifically, which is really the most competitive option for Deathwatch right now, kind of requires us to take even more expensive add-ons for every troop unit for each kill team. And
He's so good, but so overpriced.
right. So what I feel that like I am feeling that lately. But what kind of movement blocking shenanigans do you think like we can't bring servitors, I guess we could bring rhinos. but
Yours can be
finding the
speed.
points to shoehorn one
Can you
in
bring
there is
can you
impossible.
bring speeders in Army of Renown?
No, you can only
That's
bring
what I thought.
kill teams, characters, and you can bring a certain transport type based on what kill team you bring. That's it.
Yeah. The Spectre's kill teams are expensive, but they are the best move blockers you have because they're
Okay.
forward deploying units. And they can do shenanigans with, if you slop the eliminators and whatnot. And so you can do some stuff with them, but you need a couple incursors slash infiltrators or whatever that are forward deploying and can pop out and just hug somebody and or just stand in the way to get smashed.
Gotcha.
The problem, the Army of Renown puts out a stupid amount of damage. The fact that you have bikes and then jump infantry with it, so you can just Kool-Aid man through with a bike through a wall is gigantic. And you've got the mixes of that with the Terminators and jumps and everything. You've got a lot of options to do stuff with an Army of Renown, and they do put out like a silly amount of damage, but that damage is very close range. So it's another one of those things where I'm going to go back to my measure, and cut off the ring. You have
Yeah.
to know where your opponent's going to go. Um, so you have to anticipate his movement, which is difficult, but you have to set it up where does he have to go to score his secondaries? Is he got his last rod off? Is he going to take a stranglehold? Where does he have to go to take that stranglehold? Like literally, the middle is usually a nice place because it's a staging ground, but sometimes
Hmm.
you gotta. Is he have to go to the no man's land? Can I get it? Can I give my opponent a 4 if I take this objective from him? So let's go ahead and focus these two objectives. The biggest thing that I see as a mistake in everybody, not just any Deathwatch, Marine players, is trying to be too many places on the board with an army that can't do that in the first place. So I usually say, get your happy place, play in your triangle. A lot of times when I'm coaching, I literally go, if you find yourself here, it's because you made a mistake. Like if you're away from your army wandering about, because when I'm playing, I'm trying to set up unfair interactions. Like I want 5 Marines to fight against my 15 Eldar and get shot. I want to punch you. I want a limping one Space Marine in an alley as my fight. So when
Yeah.
you extend out too far, especially in missions where it doesn't even matter. Like you're playing mission 11, you take an objective away from somebody, they still get an 8. You know what I mean? Because they're going to have 2.
Yeah.
So look at what you're doing. Like I literally go down my list of things and I swear to God, I do it myself every single turn. How am I scoring? How am I denying points? Am I setting up for the next turn? And if I'm literally touching a unit and I can't answer that question immediately, I just take my hand off and figure it out. Don't do anything with them. I'd rather not move than just do something stupid for no reason. You know what I mean?
But that's
So
like all I do. That's like my thing. And sometimes I even win games. It's surprising.
just but it stops me from doing stupid shit. I mean, it's the same thing I do with myself. I literally ask that question all the time. I would rather just stay behind the blocking piece of terrain and not move than have no reason for what I'm gonna do. So I need to go, this is score points, this is deny points. Am I setting up for the next turn? And if not, well, don't move that guy. You're just basically putting your shit in harm's way.
Alexander's also asking about the Shroud Field stratagem, which, if I remember right, it stipulates unless it is the closest visible target and it is a flyer, so it is almost always visible. Like, it's that stratagem is like so close to being good, but it's not actually good.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, it doesn't work on anybody I want it to work
No,
on.
it's
So
it's unless there's another closest eligible target. It's really, but when the flyer is the only thing that you can see, it doesn't matter. Like that's what you can shoot, so that's what gets shot. So you can't really run it up and like stick it in someone's face and then say it's untargetable because the Corvus is now the closest target. I guess you could do that and drop like in a turn that you get to drop troops out of it and drop the troops in front of it. But then you're spending 2 CP when you could probably spend it on buffing up those melee troops or the troops that you just dropped out of it for some kind of, better use
I
of that.
just, man, I just want more, just
More,
more troops. I do want more because the
more.
Deathwatch army like scares the crap out of me, to be perfectly honest. So I have to win. if you're going against, you want to go here. I'll flip it for what we were supposed to be talking about.
Love it. Let's do it.
The biggest thing against Eldar is volume of crap, and that Grey Knights are significantly easier to beat Eldar with than the Deathwatch, because every single Grey Knight is a little bit cheaper what they can do because all the 5-man squads, and you've got 20 Stormbolter shots and
Yeah.
some psychics, so you can nickel and dime me the entire game, because 5 guys shoot 20 shots, they get a smite off, and then they charge something and do some damage. You know what I mean? So every single unit gets pretty big utility with that. You just gotta not both armies, you have to not overextend them. You have to
Yeah.
figure out where you're going. You literally have to have a game plan.
Yeah.
And if you're not in your game plan, you're just gonna have a hard time, because you gotta not everybody's gonna stop going somewhere else. You know what I mean? There's times in a game when you do a damage check and you literally go, "Oh, my opponent made some movement errors. Um, I now have the mobility to just, get this overwhelming assault against your opponent's army, and pick up 800, 1,000 points." Yeah, for sure, take that. But most of the time, you're taking your little triangle, and killing off one. If you're playing Data Scry, for instance, stop trying to take 4 objectives. Take 3 on the top. Yours, the 2 here, kill one.
Yeah.
Gives your opponent a 4. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's boring, but like, you extending out is probably going to lose you the game, like, especially against really fast armies like Eldar and stuff like that, because I just get to keep picking you off as you keep overextending on a multiple objectives,
Yeah.
and then
And
I go
you just have
back to
that
hiding.
movement. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So you can peek out a lot of the fly too. You can like peek out, see me, blast me, and then you move back 6 inches. Or with like a big group that you really need to keep alive, you just fire and fade. Like that's fantastic. It's
It's
fantastic.
it's it's funny because I like to join these comments in both of these. I am sad that I don't have damage for Thunderhammers, because they make me happy, and I
Yeah.
also have a Space Wolf army.
What what if I told you that in Deathwatch you can make that damage 5?
I love that too. I also love the fact you can offset heavy Thunderhammers just in
Yeah.
case.
I
But
love, yeah, exactly. It's like when a Thunderhammer isn't enough, here's a heavy Thunderhammer.
the and then I do agree that the Tyranid matchup as a Deathwatch player is easier than the Eldar matchup. I agree 100% on that, because I can just ping you. You have enough damage to actually pick up, because you can. Tyranid players a lot of times will damage check you. They put 9 warriors up, Hive Tyrant up, Tyrant Guard, Maliceptor, and just kind of push the middle and go, can you deal with it?
Yeah.
Well, Army around Deathwatch can. You can literally go, okay, well,
Yeah.
I'm willing. I'll take that. I'll take
Yeah.
that check. You know what I
Take
mean?
64 saves.
Yeah, exactly. And then just go, okay, I did actually pick you up. You have enough damage for it. You just don't have the cardio to get nickeled and dimed by my army for 5 turns.
Yeah.
So you have the damage to kill it. Your army is very scary. It's just that you have to look forward so far. You have to set your own traps, or I'm just not going to come at you because I'll just fly away.
And I wanted to make one point real quick. So I'm like a low middle tier player. Let's be honest there. But I found that playing my Grey Knights against AeldarI with that +1 to deny, like if you can routinely shut off their powers, the army efficiency, at least the players I've played against, goes into the toilet. Like they need Doom to go off. They need those powers to go off. And then
those are my rerolls.
if you stop that, if like you consistently just turn that off, oh man, it's gnarly. Like you almost feel bad. Almost.
And the thing is that if you're playing an honest game with the Grey Knights, you just have the damage. You also have Gate. Gate is terrifying. Also, Gate, do not push early with Grey Knights. There's just no reason. Hide, take snipe, hide, snipe, hide, snipe. Later in the game is when the game gets hard. The Grey Knights actually get better as the game goes on, because as you take away my trash, I can't screen for the whole game. I can screen you out for the first 2 or 3 turns. Perfect. However, when we get to 4 and 5, that's when you still have the ability to just show up in my backfield. So I can't perfectly screen for the entire game. So it's such a big deal to to have things available. So if you went in too fast, you know, and you're like, I'm gonna kill everything in the first 2 turns, I still have the resources to stop you
Yeah.
and to really make you pay for doing that. As we basically, if you make smart trades and you're nickel and diming me, you're taking away my trash, all of a sudden you can make that later turn big gate and move maybe a shunt if you're playing still playing Grandmaster Dreadnought, but if you bring stuff over later in the game, and again, Eldar's still made of tissue paper. So if you can gate over and go, oh, look,
Yeah.
there's a bunch of guys, bunch of T3 models over here. Oh, yeah. Bunch of shitty saves. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You know what?
Stormbolters feel bad in the current meta overall, and then you play a T3 army, and you're like, oh, like Stormbolters are fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Holy crap. Just picking up models left and right. So we have some more questions here. JP says, leaning into this, how would you rate several sniper units that are just there to pick off Farseers? We have some neat options as Deathwatch for, because we
I
can
do like
bring multiple eliminators and stuff.
your teleport homers and stuff like that. I like. And I like the threat of them more than the actual usage of them. I because you make it so I can't just hide behind something as far as a blob of anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I like them for denying. You probably actually won't shoot them very often at my Farseers, but you will make it so I don't get to make the most optimal plays, and I think that's worth it in
Yeah.
itself. Literally,
The,
just you could never shoot my Farseer, but the fact that I didn't get to peek out and use my Kernos bow or whatever else is actually worth it because you're making it so I'm probably going to stay farther away from you. I can't show myself for psychic powers, so a lot of times it'll be hard for me to get range just because you have the threat of them is a big deal at that point in time.
there's also the threat of the AOR has the stratagem where you can just put them back into deep strike, and it as long as it's an infantry models, like up it goes. So you can actually pull them out of combat, or you could always pull them up and then drop them down and try to get a shot the next turn, or at least there's the threat that they could come down to try to get a shot that next turn.
Well, it's nice in that those big units, you have the mixed units with bikes and everything, but if you don't, man, one of those 10-man units is still just nutbag and coming back down later in the game because you can pick up 90% of the stuff that's holding my back objectives because I'm holding it with 5-man units of T3 guys. I was bringing pirates. I had Corsairs this weekend. Just
nice.
anybody back there. But also later in the game, you a lot of times have very small amounts of people guarding a lot of characters, like double Farseers and Warlocks and stuff like that. And you can get away if you can get an aggressive move plus a deep strike. All of a sudden, you peel those 5 models that are standing inside that juicy character center, and then you can just pick up so much stuff late game. So it's big. Let's go. What else we got here? I don't want to skip stuff.
No, I don't think we've skipped anything so far.
Why don't we see more GK top placements?
Oh, there we go.
I think you're to see more GK top placements as you move on, but I actually think the Grey Knights are a better team army. I think they're a fantastic team army.
For like 2v2 or for like team tournaments, like
team tournaments, like
gotcha.
5-mans and 8-mans and stuff like that. You're going to see like lots of Grey Knights. I really think that when we go into, for instance, WTC, the World Team Championships, I think at ATC we'll probably see a decent amount of GK because you can make more skew builds too. Because if you don't have to care about like big things, Grey Knights are magical at bringing dude spam, basically 30 interceptors, 25 strikes and stuff like that. You just have all these 5-man squads over with Stormbolters and Smites. You can just murder a lot of Eldar. Eldar does not want to see GK. I don't want to see GK when I'm playing my Eldar. It's very irritating just because you also have late game moves. It's a tough match. Don't get me wrong, because every time you expose yourself, I will delete 5 guys. But you also can delete anything that gets anywhere near you. And again, operating in all phases is such a big deal. And also the Grey Knights, let's be honest, I have to pressure. I can't just do nothing because you still have the best secondary in the game.
It is true. Yeah, purifying ritual is absolutely bonkers good. Like,
Yeah.
there's no way around that. How damn good that that secondary is.
But you have the option of playing passive. You know what I mean? So if you're
Yeah,
playing something like that, you go, well, bring it. Come to me. You know what I mean?
yeah,
If you don't, I'll just score points.
yeah.
You
When
don't
I'm
have to kill anybody. You know what I mean? If you're
exactly.
scheduled to score points and you're just sitting there, you're playing.
Yeah.
I'll go to 11. Missions 11 and 33 are the two missions that a lot of times you could do absolutely fuck all because you're getting, well, you've got three objectives on 11. You have three objectives effectively in your deployment zone.
Yeah.
You can just sit on them. And 33, you're getting 3 points a turn for bonus primary because you're just going to take your priority objective every single turn.
Wh-
So you get 15 points added onto your primary, which means you only have to score a 30, which means if you get 4 8s, you now get a 45. Boom. You have to do nothing. So it's a big deal in just knowing your projected points because you can
That's a
also take it.
fantastic point, man. That's huge. Like doing the math, like pre-mathing. Like I've discovered since the new Nachman book, like I've had games where I score like 96, but I actually maxed primary on turn 4 and then I kept going for primary on turn 5 just
Right.
cuz I didn't
Yeah.
realize it. So I'm like, shit, take the objectives,
Yeah.
take
I've done the same
everything.
thing. You have to, when you're not paying attention, is when you all of a sudden go, oh, cool. I just got a 55 on primary.
Yeah, who
Oh,
cares? That's 10 points that don't matter.
exactly. Super glad I focused on getting that 12. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
when I
exactly.
could have just walked away. And it's such a big deal on that because a lot of times I'll give a story with that. I was playing, I went to Studs and Snallies in Canada. That's why I'm still the Prime Minister of Canada. But we're sitting there and we're playing a game and we're kind of coaching over some Templars versus some Sisters. And he's getting ready. Like, I'm gonna go punch him. I'm like, no, you're not gonna do any of that. We're gonna hide. You're just gonna put one person in the middle for stranglehold. And then he's like, all right, next turn, we're gonna do this. I can reach him with these guys. Like, no, we're gonna put somebody in the middle and we're gonna take stranglehold. And he's
Yep.
like, what is even happening? I go, well, the sisters player went first and took engage, and they got 2 points for engage twice, and you have last turn. So you're literally winning by, at the time it was fives. So I go, you're winning by 7. So unless he does something, you just auto win the game. Don't do anything. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like just make him do stuff because if your opponent has to extend it to you, now they're bringing 50, 60% of their army versus 100% of your army. So you just fight unfair at all times.
Yes. Yes. I mean, that's like an adage of warfare. And we know that this is a game. It's supposed to be balanced and fun. It's not supposed to be completely unbalanced. But
Ooh,
if you have taken an unfair or a fair fight, you have fucked up in the real world. Like you
yeah,
want to get them while they're down, like totally
100%
surprise
of the
them,
time.
all that.
I
I'm
love
gonna
these.
let you answer these night questions. I have to go deal with my dog real quick. He's being a
No
prick.
worries.
I'll be right
So,
back.
how do you feel about Chaos and the Pyramid Knights and Deathwatch? Which of the Night Codex more of a tough matchup? It's weird. As long as you hide, I actually think the big Imperial Knights are easier for you. They do have that some insane mortal wound tricks, but you can really offset a lot of those and play around them by just not being seen by the big knights and move blocking. The codex that I actually think might be, or the play style that might be really hard, is little knights like the carnivores taking infernal. Excuse me, and then having the +3 to move for all of them is pretty nuts because you have 17-inch movement 17-inch movement little knights just jumping all over you. You might be able to damage check them, but that's one of those matches where I don't want to get into a dice rolling contest, and that is a very difficult matchup in my opinion. So, ooh, pretty looking dog. But
he's he's
but yeah, I
so
think
wound up right now.
I love it. But I think that it's terrifying to think that you just have like a bunch of little chaos knights moving 17 on you. I think that that's significantly harder than just trying to play around a couple big nights because things like excuse me, God. Uh, but playing around big nights while they're terrifying when they can see you, is just easier than playing around 17-inch moving stuff. That's just crazy time. When you're basically running by speeders and going, "Why are you taking too long?" It's a big thing.
4-1 at the Birmingham GT, but they did not use the new night books, and no one in your area plays them. Huh? Interesting.
It's
I've
weird because
only played
the
them
cat.
once.
I played in an warm up RTT before the Rocky Top. I watched a guy with a Castellan do 38 mortal wounds to Magnus turn one. So
Yeah,
it
I've
was
heard about that volcano cannon wombo combo thing.
yeah. The thing
Pretty
is that
funny.
I still think it's, even though that they can get some big stuff like that. I think that the big knights are just easier to play around. If a big knight sees you, you're dead. However, you can just hide from them. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? You can see them, they can't see you, kind of thing.
I was
Uh,
just gonna say that is such a big, like, they have the Titanic keyword usually, so like being able to always see them is just nuts.
but I really like. I'm really afraid. I'm not gonna lie. In any of my armies, I'm actually afraid of the small knight rush with, because like chaos knights with inferno, you take them as infernal and then they pop that +3 to move. So 17-inch move knights, especially they just go first. And you're like, oh, cool. That's why it's always for me a forward deploying unit or two. Typically, usually two. If I'm playing something with power armor, I need somebody that can start the game up. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because sometimes you're just going to get something killed, but man, I can't have people just being in my deployment zone turn one, especially if you play a Dawn of War mission. Oh my god, no, just no.
what if I told you that Deathwatch can do that pretty reliably?
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
just you need somebody to get in the way. Move blocking is just you you're like, a lot of times you're like, oh, I can do this, this, and this, but like, man, just put somebody in the way and shoot somebody else. Like you can actually take your target priorities so different. Like if you can get to for just two tyrants, you don't. I can go up on Maliceptors and just go, hey, enjoy not moving this turn, you know,
yeah,
and then I'll shoot the left because this isn't moving. So same thing. And the thing was with an Eldar, a lot of that you can do with aggressive moves from some of your trash, move block trash, because it also affects things that can that have to deep strike back. Hawk units, Baharoth, for instance, if you're just pushed up on him, he still has to. It's the same as a deep strike, so you still have to push 9 inches away. So you can just guard objectives and things of that nature by being behind terrain, but making it so that you're still blocking the 9 onto objectives,
yeah.
so they can't do shenanigans to you. It's just really important to own the board and know where you're going to be. Again, pre-measure, pre-measure, pre-measure. Also, stop blocking out exactly to 9. You're wasting so much movement. It drives me crazy. Measure
Oh,
their opponent's
yeah.
uh, unit. Literally, gaining a couple extra inches. I will go into all the dirty comments. A couple extra inches always matters. It just does, though, because especially if you're playing both Grey Knights and Deathwatch, every shot that you're not firing, every shot that I'm making you not get because you're blocking out your backboard edge is fantastic for me. Because, but the thing is, you need to be able to get back into the fight. And if you're all the way there and you're trying to block out like a 10-man unit, it's what I have in reserve or something, you just don't need to be that close. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I just grab my models. I mean, I don't know how people are, but like just literally grab the unit and just go, okay, do you mind if I just measure? Yeah, go ahead, brother. You know what I mean? Everybody's going to be cool. Just see what the actual size of what it is.
Yeah.
I mean,
How
I've seen
big
like,
is that unit
right.
footprint? Yeah, yeah. It's like I remember when the Necron book hit, the like Veil of Darkness 20 warrior like combo was everywhere and it was devastating, but I'm like, you know how hard it is to fit
What do you,
21
yeah.
models?
Yeah. Plus
21
the
models
HQs.
into your like opponent's deployment zone, unless you're playing against custodes or knights, like that should be pretty much impossible because it's a blob like this.
I like this. You're looking at Stephen Bach's game versus AeldarI at BEL. It looks like Centurions and other 2+ save units can be interesting way to counter the pesky Hell's high AP weapons. Having good saves is always good. In all seriousness, It's just whether they put a volume up into him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that you just don't want to be rolling 30 saves. I'd rather hide a little bit. He did a great job. He smashed all weekend. You know what I mean? The Centurions were crazy. I love it. I own a million Centurions, so I'd love them to be good.
I
So
have I have 3 assaults, and I love them, but
yeah,
I wish I could take them in the Army of Renown, but you can't. So
yeah. It's just so I do like some stuff, big stuff on that with just good saves. It's all right now with Armor Contempt. I do like things with 2-up saves. That's why you're seeing Blood Angels and stuff started to get more play. Sanguinary Guard, amazing.
Sanguinary Guard, yep.
The 2-up save. And the thing is that I've seen a lot of the Army of Renowns for Deathwatch get putting more and more Terminators in their mixed list. Just because of that, though, just being able to tank, sitting on a piece of terrain against other armies that actually care about terrain or care about, cover.
Yeah.
But getting that zero, that 1-up, 0-up, whatever, you know what I mean? It's just a big deal when you're getting shot with small arms fire. So
I love the mixed units in Deathwatch, because you get like the movement of the biker and the Van Vet, and then you get the tankiness of the Terminators. You get all those weapon combos and stuff. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of things to keep track of, but it's a lot of fun to play it.
it's a huge deal. I love it though. I think that it's very terrifying on that. It's just the range on that. You have to premeasure, and plan to turn ahead.
Mm-hmm.
You can't
Absolutely.
if you start reacting to faster armies, you're always going to feel like you weren't in the game because you're always a turn behind because they're faster than they just are faster than you. So you have to think where are they going to be and plan for that and find yourself. Man, I guess my biggest thing in this is if you have a 5 objective mission and you constantly find yourself in the bottom right hand corner, why are you there? You know what I mean? And then you ask yourself, what happened in this game?
Yeah.
Well, you're chasing.
Yeah.
Don't go
So
chasing water. Here we go. Here's my new advice. Don't go chasing waterfall.
yeah, nice. Some TLC references, man. Woo! It's going back to the 90s.
But
Alexander is asking about some relic and warlord trait combos that we can do. I think that the Indomitor Sergeant upgrade, adds a wound and ups their armor save. I think that's a really fun thing to do if you include an apothecary to just keep bringing that guy back. That's a pretty age-old
yeah,
strategy.
I like that one a lot. He's really really good, and just bringing him back is just such a huge deal. So yes, you need an apothecary to make that work.
Yeah.
Uh, and the thing is that if you're going to be fair,
To be fair.
everything in ninth edition gets picked up. Uh, all the armies are so lethal that if you just leave something in the open, it's going to die. If
Yeah.
your opponent wants something to die, and that's literally every army. Just everybody has so much lethality in their armies that I don't think that anybody is so tough that they can just sit.
Mm-hmm.
So besides maybe a few random OP things, but most of the time, but you just want to make it tough. You want to skew the math so that there's always a chance that you either make it out alive or your opponent has to overkill something. That's a big deal too. But a bigger deal on that is stop using strats on units that have no chance at surviving.
Yeah,
That
that's another thing that I do, or I used to do, but now I can at least do the quick math in my head, and I'm like, you know, how likely are they to even survive this units firing at it
right.
versus the next 3 units that have to fire at it, like,
I
okay,
see people
don't
popping
transhuman.
transhuman and +1 save on this one. You're like, you do know that even with those, you die like 3 times over. Just
Yeah,
save your CP. They're so valuable,
yeah,
especially for later in the game. Let's see. I play Grey Knights and Thousand Suns. I got 2 friends who keep complaining they can't do anything about mortal wounds. They don't want to play against psychers anymore. Tell them to take more trash. In all seriousness, just take more trash.
yeah,
Uh, if you're playing against Grey Knights and Thousand Suns, it's important that you screen behind pieces of terrain. People just keep trying to screen in the open. You can't do that because you just obviously kill the screens with psychics and then gate and or use the duplicity power to be where you want to be. So that's a big deal. So the you have to screen from behind terrain, and you need to have trash. You can't just take heavy hitters, because what happens is who's screening, who's move blocking, who's doing your secondaries. You know what I mean? If you only have high damage, like, this is what I'm taking. Well, then who's scoring points? It's important to be able to score points. You don't have to take trash like I do. I may overdo it. That's kind of my thing,
Yeah,
is like having
it's
so much trash
it
in
it
my
does
armies.
it does make me wonder. So I like the lore of Deathwatch and Grey Knights. I like the fact that they're super elite armies, but it like pretty much negates me bringing trash, right? Like I don't have Crute Hounds, I don't have Breachers, I don't have Dire Avengers. It hurts when you stick out like a 350 point unit,
Right.
you know,
But I do think you have to have extra strikes. If you're playing, you got to have, for me, 30 interceptors are an auto. I'm going to break them
pretty
all into
much, yeah.
fives. I
So good.
want a bunch of units of strikes. You know what I mean? You just have to have some guys that can just get in the way and take five strikes, while not a throwaway unit, is still something that I can do a little bit of damage, and I can still take an objective, do a secondary, do whatever. You still just have to you have to score. You know what I mean? In the
Yeah,
end,
for
I
sure.
mean, if you table my army and I win by 15, I'm perfectly okay with literally getting tabled every turn, every game, and just winning.
Yep.
I just don't care.
Yeah.
So, if you're in the corner doing nothing for most of the game, and I can never kill you, and you take a double paladin brick, you're like, you killed none of my models. And I'm like, I don't care.
I'm going to win anyway.
I
Yeah.
scored a 98. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, you have to score points. And I really recommend anybody's army go on the table in the basement, at the game store, on TTS. You don't even need an opponent. Just literally put your army down and play out turn one or two.
Yeah,
And if you can't score max points by yourself, you have to change your deployment and or your army.
I think I've actually heard you say that before, and I've brought it up on the stream with other people on. But that is, and I've done that, and you can learn so much. You don't need an opponent or anything. Like, just you built your list, and then if you built it with a competitive mindset, you built it with your secondaries in mind. So roll up a random mission and do that. Yeah, see if you can score, can get your 12 and all your secondaries each turn. And if you can, then you have an excellent like start of a list. Um,
100%.
yeah,
It,
I
it,
love
but
that.
you have the thing is that it lets you go, oh, how am I going to play? Because so many times I watch somebody deploy, and then I just go, all right, well, I'm probably going to win now. You can't deploy to win, but you can deploy not to lose. You know
I
what I mean?
okay, all right.
So
Well, deployment's the weakest part of my game, so
it's
tell me more.
so important though. So that's the thing about doing what I just said though, is that most of the time your opponent's turn isn't gonna, like, literally just doesn't affect your turn. And, like, especially your turn one. I deploy like my whole army 90% of the time. And my opponent has nothing to do with it. When you deploy, you're not going to change the fact that I'm going to hide. It's not when people just switch off and take and just burn time. Like, if you deploy, am I just going to deploy in the open? No, I'm going to deploy behind my buildings. You know
Yeah.
what I mean, or my walls, or whatever the hell I've got. I'm not just going to put people up like, oh, Rick put that guy there, so I'm just going to go ahead and start putting units on the board edge and just being in the open. No, I don't care.
It's true. It's an
You know where I'm
interesting
going to
point.
go.
Yeah,
I
it's an
don't give a
interesting
shit.
point. Yeah,
I'm
it's
gonna
like
I'm gonna
okay,
put.
there are two big obscuring ruins in our deployment zones. Where's
Right.
everybody's army going? Oh, right.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yeah.
Like, it's not like a big shock. Like, I can't believe Brad used that hidden technology to put his guys where he didn't get
Behind
shot in the head.
obscuring. Yeah.
But the thing is that how to layer your guys is a big deal. Who's going in front? Does the unit that I put there have range to get stranglehold turn one? Those kind of things. Do you have some
Yeah.
forward deployers? Do you have some fast units? Do you have fast trash? What is scoring your strangle? What is scoring your engage? Who's R&D? What units are you going to use to do these things, and know where they are? Just have a game plan. My game plan's the same a lot. I'm pretty boring about this. I'm like the Cal Ripken Jr. of just doing the same shit over and over again.
Yeah, but I mean, if you do it consistently, right?
Well, it's reps. It's I mean,
like
I should do
yeah,
it though.
but like in everything ever, right? Programming, Warhammer, like I don't know, mowing the lawn, like like repetition, and yeah,
I'll
like
use another fight thing for
going
this.
back to basics every time.
It is
Yeah,
though. I'll tell you a fun fight story type thing. This is just guys. I'm working out, and a couple guys at the gym were talking about how much of a chump so and so UFC fighter is, and they were all like guys that did like some boxing and stuff. And I accidentally just kind of chuckled, and they're like, "All right, you old bastard, what are your dumbass laughing about?" And I just go, "What do you do for a living?" And the one guy's like, "I'm a college student." The other guy's like, "I'm the cable guy." I go, "These dudes fight 8 hours a day, man. Like all those guys would kill you."
yeah.
You go, you know
It's
why? Anybody that does something for 8 hours a day is just going to be better than you are.
yeah,
It's just,
yeah, it's a scale, right? Like it's oh man, now I'm forgetting the term, but it's like within that group, that population, right? Like if you have the 12 best Warhammer players on the planet in one room, one of them is the best and one of them is the worst. But being the worst of the top 12 is like is fucking fantastic, right?
right.
Like you are
And
a
that's what,
very good player and you can take a game off of any of those other 11 guys at any time
but I could
because
lose
like
to
the
any of
skill set
those.
exactly. Right. So like it's God, now I can't remember the word that I was going to use. But yeah, it's like no, that chump UFC fighter who's the worst in the league is still in a professional league.
Yeah, exactly.
Fights all the
That's what I'm
time.
saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I go, he's literally the best fighter you've ever met. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like that worst guy that you saw that you were like, oh, this guy's terrible. Like that's literally the best dude you've ever met in your whole life, unless you're at a professional gym or something. You know what I mean? Like, the people are just at such a high level, and most of the time in Warhammer, people ask it all the time, and like I see some podcasts and I always crack up because I go, I'm so boring about this. I go, I occasionally make a really good combat move that maybe you didn't think of, but I make like one of those every other tournament. Most of the time, my move block, I screed out and I have good tiger priority. I don't have like super exciting ways that I win games. I just tend to do the same shit over and over and over
Well,
again.
your tournament results speak that tends to work. So
No, but I'm saying, but that is like I always say that even in just coaching and stuff like that. I sometimes I think that people I think I'm going to give them like this like new secret voodoo. No, we're gonna work basic boring shit.
yeah,
Unfortunately, it's just that's what wins.
yeah,
Being not leaving open holes, move blocking effectively, choosing good target priorities, not exposing yourself. Just it's the same stuff, but you have to do it over and over and over again because certain situations look different than they are. Most of the time, it's the same shit that you're going against. It's slightly different way. You're still just move blocking. You're still the biggest thing is again. I know I can say this so much, and I feel like a broken record, but man, you just got to know how far your opponent's models can go. It's just how it is. You can have entire rounds of not getting shot if you would just take just a little bit of seeing how far they can go. You and I are playing, and I go, all right, kid, your model goes 18 to here, goes 8 to here, and then can see. Do we both agree that you can't see here? Cool, done. And just keep doing that,
yeah,
and just not get. I mean, you can't prevent all of it, but like you can prevent most of it. You can box out uh, a flying hive tyrant. Don't let him have a free charge that he can then overrun back 17. Those are things that you can do in pre-measure, make him extend his charge a little bit out. So now he bounces back and he's not behind cover. He's in the open, So give yourself opportunities to win the game. You're not going to win every game. Nobody wins every game. They don't. I'm just
yeah.
unless you're playing like your 2-year-old, you're like, you wanted to move your stuff in the open, Jimmy? I can't believe it. But
Weird.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but everybody just give yourself a chance. That's what you really need. And the thing is that if you don't know how you're going to score the game, if you don't know have a plan, have a bad plan, but just have some sort of plan.
That's
Have a
the only
game
plan I
plan.
have, man.
Well, it's big though, because before, like, especially if you're doing player place, if you guys are going to Atlantic City or anything like that, do not put a model down, a piece of terrain down until you know what your secondaries are and what your game plan is. Just you have to pick all those together. I see so many people that are like, how are you going to play this game? They're like, all right, I'm going to play it super defensively. I'm going to hide. I'm going to do this. And then I look at their secondaries and they chose all aggressive secondaries
Yeah.
and chose engage and this other thing. And you're like, yeah, but it wasn't your game plan to sit. You're like, yeah, but well, you're not, well, one of these things isn't happening. Or you put your terrain down and then you think of your secondaries after you put your terrain down. No, figure out your secondaries first, put your terrain down, look at the board and go, how can I set my terrain up so I can rod, R&D, so I can
Whatever.
like
We
score
all
my
know what you
engage.
mean.
Yeah. But figure out where your terrain's going. How am I going to score? What am I trying to do? Don't just go, I'm going to hide. No, you have to hide in. Can I had like weird, if you look at my games at Rocky Top, I have like a piece of terrain 4 inches thing. I have another piece of terrain. I'm layered
Yeah,
going in because that's how I'm going to play that game. So I don't
and that way
care
you're
what's in my back.
moving and you always have that cover. Like, like you said, your army does not want to get looked at funny. It's super,
Right.
super fragile. Yeah.
So it's just super important how you're looking at the game and what you're playing against, but just you can't have no plan because then you're risking just scoring no points. You know what I mean? I really think that win or lose, the 4 year success, especially if you're a newer player, less experienced player, the benchmark for success in a game should be, did you score all the points that you could score, the points that your opponent couldn't take away from you? Did you
Hmm.
strangle? Did you R&D? Did you do purifying ritual? You know what I mean? Did
Yeah.
you do the point? Did you get the points that were your points? You know what I mean? And then you kind of go from there, because you're gonna fuck shit up. Uh, my thing when I'm
It's
coaching
almost
is
like
like,
it's a complicated game or something.
yeah, I try to, but my goal with myself and with people that I coach is I go, fuck up something different every time. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like,
That's
don't
like
make the
that's a
same mistake.
yeah, that's a thing that I have just in real life, like in general. Like learning is amazing. You should always be learning. But to really learn, you need to make mistakes. And then hopefully, you only make that mistake once, right? And you'll make different mistakes. Learn different things because that's what you're learning from those mistakes, right? Like, if you guys haven't listened to the Art of War Unbroken podcast, which you should, they talk about that all the time. The point is, we learn the most from our losses, and you
Dude,
lost because you made mistakes. Like, that
I
most commonly, right?
Yep.
Like,
Oh, 100%.
yeah,
And
like
I
you
love
lost because you made mistakes.
I love the fact that I never want to lose. But if I go too long with, especially if I go too long without losing, I start to get super nervous because what you're saying, you haven't
I
made.
wish I had that problem.
No, it's not even just get a little luck. You know what I mean? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You go into test games and stuff like that, and if I haven't been losing, I don't know what to fix. And if I don't know what to fix, I can't optimize my play and my list to continue growing as a player into the next tournament. So I love optimizing list. I love it. I'm constantly just
Yeah.
now. With that
15 points
said,
here, 15 points there.
with that being said, stop retooling your entire list all the time. You have figure out what your list core is and then solve for X.
Hmm.
You can't solve for A through Z. It just if there's too many moving parts, you have absolutely no idea what's working and what's not.
Yeah.
Figure out. I mean, and maybe you have to change your core list at some point in time. But if you're just trying to tinker, don't over tinker. Figure out what the core of your list is and go from there. And it is a huge deal, especially when you're trying to get into, how am I beating Eldar? How am I beating Tau? How am I beating Tyranids? With your Deathwatch and your Grey Knights, you can't be changing 1,000 points out of the list kind of thing. You know what I mean? You need to be changing a few hundred points of the list. Is your list a Paladin Star type list? Is it work around that? Is it a big a silver tide kind of list where you just have a million units
Hmm.
all doing points, figure out who you are, and then you can take out a squad here, a squad there for something. You just can't keep deciding different, because what happens is you don't get enough experience with it. You're always changing. You don't get a good feel for what your army does, and you never know if you fixed for your problem. You know what I mean? What
Absolutely.
was the problem?
Yeah. I don't want Jenkins' comment to get lost. He's asking specifically about how many Dread Knights you should put in the teleportation chamber if you're against a lot of big guns. Um,
Right.
I've been
A
playing
decent amount.
almost entirely infantry now, so I don't even know where to begin to answer that
Yeah.
question.
I don't like the Dread Knights is not my right now because of the fact that people are teching against Tyranids. Dread Knights really got caught up in the mix of that, and everybody's bringing enough damage to kill you. And with the fact that you also just don't have damage reduction, there's a lot of 2 damage weapons right now in the
Hmm.
mix.
Yeah.
Shuriken cannons like just ruin your life as a Dread Knight right now because of the 2 damage.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, but if you have a lot of big guns, I you can usually hide the dreadnoughts. Hide the dreadnoughts. Make sure you have teleport homers on them, except the fact that you're going to burn some on shunt, or just be gating people around. If you're playing a decent amount of dread knights still, it's very, very important to hit the flanks and the wings. You can't just slam down dread knights in the middle of the board. You will get picked up. People just have too much damage. The meta has skewed so hard because Tyranids exist, and Tau just accidentally do that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They just put out a huge amount of damage. So between people teching for Tyranids and Tau existing, you can't just sit. You can't do the kind of moves that sometimes you were able to do 6 months ago. You know what I mean? Where you would just push with your Dread Knights. You have to really hit the flanks and not be shot. So have some teleport. Be ready to shunt. Plan gating, and look for big turns on the left or right flank. I played uh, Grey Knights for Du Bois, and what did I play right before it? And I played 4 Dread Knights in each of those armies. That was a while back, of course. This
Hmm.
is last year. But I really overload flanks with guys. I love to, shun up and gate up like Dread Knights and just take shots from hard corners because they're still really good. It's just the meta has just been super damaging. So there's
Yeah.
that.
I've been I've most of my Grey Knight lists right now are all Silver Tide with maybe one Paladin or one Terminator Bomb, and then I have one Grandmaster Dread Knight, and that's it. And it's because he gets that defensive option where like he can gate
Vigil,
out,
baby, so good.
right? Like, yeah,
Crazy.
I
He's still
know.
good. I still like him, but I am and I'm also skewed on this because I just play infantry lists more. That's just my style as a whole. So, but I really like Grey Knight infantry right now. Silver Tide for me is a really good army. You have a chance against like really anything. You make it annoying for Tyranids. You have enough damage to actually give them a run. You can make Tao's life miserable if you get off a couple assaults, to be honest. And Eldar have no desire to ever play you. It's
Yeah, all the denies, man. Woo! Like,
well, it's all the denies and just the Stormbolters, man. You just
yeah,
keep shooting 20 shots at like all of my stuff. Most of my saves are 4-ups around this place. So
yeah.
it's just you're
Half
just
of those
pulling
wounds are
guys.
gonna get through. Yeah,
Right. You're just
that's
picking
nuts.
up, and I don't have a huge wound count. That's the thing is all of the AeldarI doesn't matter. Dark Elf, but besides that, you don't even see it anymore with the thick city type thing. That was like a blip and whatever. Most of this you're just going to see is a lot of one, maybe 2 wound models all over the place. Most of my stuff is single wound. You get some bikes that are 2, but like your Stormbolters, your psychics, and stuff like that, you, putting damage into that army picks people up. It's a big deal in that.
Man,
Oh,
we got some big questions in
that,
chat
that
right
I was
now.
just about to
Woo!
say it.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go with buddies first because everything's is hard, so I need to think on that. Can y'all talk about the solo practice again? I want to take some notes so I can get some practice in. I didn't want to play missions yet. Solo practice, 100%. Set it up by yourself. Put a mission out. Doesn't matter what the mission is.
Roll it up.
Yeah,
That's what I
just
suggest.
deploy either do a set terrain, do GW terrain, player place terrain, whatever you're going to be playing into, set that up and deploy your army and then play the first 2 turns. And then figure out what I scored without anyone playing against me. Did I deploy correctly so I can have somebody for stranglehold? Did I do engage? Is there somebody that can R&D? Do I have somebody that can reach the objective from banners? I see people doing it all the time. They choose banners and then they don't have anybody that can even get to the neutral zone objectives to banner. So you have
Yeah.
to change how you're doing that. You either need to put in some forward deployers that can banner right away, or you need to have some faster stuff that can banners. So it's very important to just do that first. And it's so much easier to set stuff up, guys. You get nervous. Everybody gets nervous in games, man. You know what I mean? You got somebody playing against you. You want to make sure you're not messing anything up. You want to make sure you're trying to win. You want to make sure you're being cool to your opponent. By the way, in 40K, you actually owe your opponent at least a decent game. You owe your
Yep.
opponent to be cool. So, but
Agree.
doing that stuff first makes you more calm, confident, and relaxed. The more calm, confident, relaxed you are, the better you're going to play, and also the more fun you're going to have. If you're nervous, tense, you're worried about your rules, you're constantly looking things up, you're going to have a worse time because you're going to be spending time making like just worrying that you're not fucking something up. You know what I mean? Have the stratagems that you're going to use out in front of you. Do a cheat sheets.
Yep.
I've done this before, especially when I was bringing a brand new army. I'll literally have note cards, like index cards, and talk about what I'm going to do command phase and stuff like that.
Yep.
I've been playing for 22 years,
I
man. I still
I
use all this stuff.
I have a Deathwatch and a Grey Knight cheat sheet, and then I also buy those silly little uh, those little reference cards, and I'll leave them all over the whole table, like which unit has which buffs. I've even made my own to like remember that they have, reroll all hits from Drago or whatever, because otherwise I will forget. I am a scatterbrain moron, and I am usually like, cracking jokes with my opponent and stuff, and then I'll just forget. And a lot of those buffs, like you bring a character for a buff, and then when you forget that you gave them that buff,
It's
it feels
huge,
really bad. Yeah. So
100%. Buddy, on the talk about the missions, the secondaries, you choose 3 secondaries per mission, and they are in the mission book. The
yeah,
current one is
Knockman.
Nachman GT bag things.
Yeah.
So, but like,
Um, a lot of them are available in the core rulebook and your codex as well. Just remember that a whole bunch of them have changed. Wahapedia, gonna say it. Everybody loves Waha. Wahapedia is the entire book up there if you need to reference it.
and Wahapedia is so good for that because Wahapedia also, if you look at a unit, it'll show every stratagem that you can use for that unit, which is
Yep.
very, very helpful. I
Yep.
love it. Exit John, 100%. No cards of each phase really helps. I'm telling you right now, if you're a newer player, you can't have enough stuff to help you. Again, I've been playing for 22 years. I literally always have cards, notes, all kinds of other things. I still use these. If you're not using them, you're doing yourself a disservice because, like you were sort of saying, if all of a sudden you're missing buffs, you're missing things that you could be doing, your army becomes less awesome, and you just get over yourself on that. Like, um, let's go into this hard question.
Yeah,
If
I'm
you're to make
actually super curious to hear your answer.
So if I were to make one change in Eldar and Tau to bring them back towards balance, what would it be? I'm going to start with Eldar because it's my baby. So I think Eldar are the closest to being balanced of anybody else. I think that to not feel bad when you're playing against Eldar, if I was just going to do one, it's going to be a combination. Hawks can only bounce once a game, and Baharath shouldn't be able to bounce out of close combat. Period. And I think that would make it feel a million times better because you wouldn't feel like you couldn't do anything. You know what I mean? So that's a big deal. Nids are literally just points.
Really? Like
They've al- they
I've
fig-
been manhandled by that Mallow and the like
it's-
zoanthropes or
well,
whatever.
well,
Ooh.
well, they already changed some stuff. So
Oh, they did. Okay.
they changed the Maliceptor so that he effectively can only cast twice, period. Because now the psychic action counts as a cast. And
Oh, thank God.
they changed the stratagem that gave you an extra cast to only be used by characters. Maleceptor's not a character, so he can only do, instead of 12 mortal wounds on that thing, he can only do 6. So that's
Okay,
a big deal.
that's huge. Yeah.
So they also changed encircling to be at the end of the move phase, so it's basically you can't use it anymore. So what the big deal on that is, Tyranids just have too much shit on the board for the points. I mean, they just do. You know what I mean? You've got 25-point warriors, you've got 170-point everything big bugs.
Are those
You know,
warriors only 25 points?
yeah,
Oh, baby. They're so good.
Leviathan, they're T8, they're transhuman, you know what I mean? They're obsec, they smash. And then you've got things like harpies. You know, you put synapse on a harpies, 170 points. He literally flies over, does bomb attacks, has 6 strength, 9, EP 3, 4 flat damage guns, plus his trash guns. Plus he did mortals on the flyover. Oh yeah, forgot to mention he's synapse. Only wounded on a 4, and you can cast psychic powers through him as long as he's in synaptic link. So you can just do, they do too much for the points. It's just it's literally a point thing. After
Huh.
they fixed a couple of those things that I said before, reining in the mortals a little bit, reining in that ridiculous stratagem, it's that's good. They're a point thing, so it's just points. My one thing with Tau or with Nids would be that Tau are very, very hard to balance. Uh, I actually don't have a good balance on that. We obviously have to change it so that crisis suits aren't laughably the best thing in the army. It's not even close. Yeah, I mean, so is that a point thing? Probably. I don't know if it's a mechanics thing, to be honest with that. I think NIDs are super easy to balance. Unfortunately, it requires like a shit ton of points adjustments. I think Eldar are pointed fine, actually. I think that you need a couple mechanical adjustments to Hawks and Baharoth, and it just wouldn't feel that bad. It's just annoying when you can't do anything, too. You know what I mean? So,
So when, I mean, we talked earlier at the very beginning about Hail of Doom and how you think that that's, you know, pretty stupid. It's an uninteresting playstyle compared to other options out there.
it's just
Yeah,
boring. They
right.
could make, if they made it all consuming, it would probably be. So if you could take, you had to take hail and not masterful shots. It's the combination of just doing the damage and ignoring
Yeah, because it's basically
the stuff.
+1 AP on every one of your guns
Correct, and then
when
just
you ignore it. When you
right.
ignore cover. Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a big deal on that. It's just the least fun. I don't think it's a huge problem. The damage is significant, don't get me wrong, but again, you can kill stuff with it. Uh, I think their win rate is still going to stay at like 50 some percent, which is good, which makes them a top army. But again, there's a huge difference between just random guy playing and me playing Eldar. And that's not trying to pat myself on the back, but it just is. If you've got a lot of experience, a very experienced Eldar player is going to feel playing against them, not just because of the skill level, just because Eldar gives you so many tools to do stuff. So if you know, if you got experience playing with them, the game feels a million times different than somebody that's just less experienced.
Yeah.
It's super hard to play. It's very rewarding, but it also can feel,
That.
holy shit, this army's broken. But the problem is, I'll give you something that Stu from GW told me over. We're at Adepticon, and he goes, "How do I balance an army that at the top levels feels oppressive, but at the mid levels only wins 50%?" It was Eldar. There's a couple other armies that work like
Mhm.
that, where top players, I can really abuse everything they do. But in the mid, if they nerf it, well, all of a sudden you're like, what the hell, man? Like I was already only winning at half my games. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
why am I getting punished? You know, for playing an army that I like. So it is difficult for armies like that have, and Tao's very, I think, very difficult because they only operate in one phase.
Yeah, and
So
you can't nerf them too hard in that phase because that's their only phase. They don't
correct.
really get to fight. They don't. I mean, other than maybe one guy
Yeah,
that you stick that
one
crazy.
commander.
Yeah,
Right?
like it's not like Blood Angels, right? Where that like the fight phase is their phase, but they at least can shoot while they move up. You know, but like,
Yeah, and
yeah,
it's a big deal on that. So, for them, it's hard because whatever way you skew, it can just ruin the army. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a
They could
great
go
point.
they could literally go from best to worse. Corn has the exact same thing. Anybody that only operates in one phase for their damage is lives on a knife's edge of
Hmm.
whether they're amazing or they're terrible. It's just
Yeah.
so hard because they're not doing anything else. I do
Hey,
love the addition to the question. What would you change about Marines and Deathwatch? 100% easy peasy points. Completely fixed. We're so far behind because they were trying to do paper points adjustments. So Marines got nerfs for the sins of 6 months to 8 months before. It just
yeah.
doesn't make any sense.
God,
We're so we're
I
so past that.
I almost cheered when I saw that they were no longer like going to do the Munitorum book or
Uh,
whatever. Like, oh my
who
gosh,
it doesn't make any difference. The problem is that why are we doing this? Like I'm an old man and I still think it's ridiculous for paper stuff. You know, what I mean, like, dude, this is my thing. Put out a codex 1 month after the codex, 4 weeks. You get an FAQ and you get the points adjustments that the codex needs. It just be like hot fixes for any game. Literally, that's how
yeah,
90% of everybody. That's obviously how
yeah,
computer games work. But even if you talk about different games that we played before, there's other miniature games do the exact same thing. They just go, okay, well, here's a hot fix. Here's the new points. You know what I mean? They constantly just update it. I don't understand how that's not happening here. If you knew, and even right now, where they're saying we're going to get every 3 months, everybody was excited about that because you know that there's at least hope. You're not going to have a broken meta too long. But if we were just doing this every month, fine tuning, just doing that all the
like
time,
like
it
nine
would.
months of Drukari or whatever it was.
That's the thing with it though, because we had a couple things with it. That's another army where I thought there was counters for you. I love that they should have been constantly doing it, like a little. I like the fact they
Hmm.
did a little time, but they only put it out in books, so it waits
Took
too
too
long.
long. Yeah,
Because now Drakari, I think Drakari is a fantastic army too. It just took too long for them to point it exactly where they needed to go, and then they hit a couple things too hard at that point in time. Because then they're like, oh, they've been a menace for too long. You're like, no, you kind of adjusted their points fine, but then you opened up a different army to be broken inside there. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
the incubi, hellions, witches, and everything else, that army's fine. You know what I mean? And it's fine because you also can kill the shit out of it even if they're winning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it still feels like you have an interactive game.
Um,
So
I do want to remind everyone to please ask your questions, but we do have to wrap this up in like 15, 20 minutes. Brad has other places to be, and I have to go to work. So we can't do this too much longer.
let's
Um,
rock the questions real quick. I'll make
do
them
it.
quick.
Let's
For
do
two plus
it.
save army, is an apothecary necessary when there are 10 paladins? Yes. I just started reading 10, 30 paladins or 10 paladins and terminators. Yeah, you need an apothecary.
Yeah.
Uh,
The
it, it
the only caveat there is that the Grey Knight Apothecary almost feels bad when I take him compared to like a Primaris one, which obviously you can't bring in Grey Knights just because like the heal and bring like two or heal twice, bring a or what is it? Heal once, bring
he'll
two guys back or
two guys
whatever.
back.
That's
Yeah,
so
bring
good.
he'll twice bring a guy back.
Yeah, and you can't do that with the or bring a guy back for free. Where like
Right.
Grey Knights, you have to spend one CP every turn, and like you probably already planned where those CP are, and to do that, but then you
Yeah.
can't not do it because the paladin's like 44 points.
So expensive, dude. So it's just hard not to.
Like
100%.
yeah, it's so hard not to. But ugh,
Let's see. Any specific Deathwatch tech choices come to mind against Eldar? You discussed Eliminator threat, and also the Corvus doesn't cut it. Can you think of much else long range stuff like missile launchers? The problem is that unless you're playing like the old Deathwatch, like a Dreadnought spam type list, uh, you're not going to get a ton of long range. I think that uh, premeasure, and setting up for later does it. You do have to have enough fast stuff. You have to have some bikes. You have to have some Vanguard vets. I think you have to have more of those in your
I
army.
I'll take that question a little bit more specific. One of the things I've been looking at adding into my list lately, because there are so many AeldarI, so many flying Nids, and so many which also have fly, is we have the Vorkan Pattern Auspicator, which is +1 to hit flying in a bubble around a character, do you think that that's like worth teching into because it's reliable into so much of the S tier
That's
armies?
not bad. The thing is that is something that I'd like to test, to be honest. Perfectly true. To be perfectly honest, I'd like to try it. And here's another thing. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't put something in your army. Put it on the board first. Throat
Oh,
punch
yeah,
anybody that
sure.
tells you can't bring something. No, that just drives me crazy.
Yeah.
I have iterations on my list that
I,
came from the worst idea ever.
I,
Like, what about this?
uh,
You're like, well, everything sucked in this thing, this idea, but
but
I I came up with, this nugget. And you
yeah,
don't get those if people browbeat you into only taking what the internet said was the best.
yeah.
Like, just
I
put shit on
wanna
the board.
I wanna preface this as like this is a theory crafting discussion. It's not like I don't do anything unless old man Brad blesses it with. That's not where I'm going. I'm just thinking of other tech that might work well. Like I know when Deathwatch was doing the big dreadnought castles with like five or like six of them, they would take it because at the time it was raider spam. And you had Drukari everywhere, and you had to get them out of those fucking raiders, or they would kill. Like they would win, hands down. You couldn't like you
And
would
it's so funny because
like
if
turn
you
one or two,
kill,
you had to pop the raiders.
yeah, if you pop the Raiders early though, then you won. So it's such a weird thing of that.
Exactly.
Beacon and Jealous is, I think, I auto for me. To tell you the truth, I really like the Beacon. I just want to be movement is such a big deal. Period.
Yeah.
And John made a great point. The bite troops are scary. Basically, getting angles on Eldar is what you want. Anytime you could shoot the Eldar is such a big deal. You got to figure that the bikes have a 3-up save. Most of the aspect warriors are sitting in a 4-up, like the banshees, the dire avengers, stuff like that. Just put a huge amount of shots on them. They're all T3. They just die. They're failing half of their
Mhm.
saves. So if you just take a bunch of trash bolter shots from either Grey Knights or Deathwatch, do just go away. So it's important to do chip damage, chip damage, chip damage, setting up for other things. Things like the beacon are a really good tech against Eldar. You need to be able to move. Movement is so key.
Yeah, I really love the beacon. It is my second favorite relic in the whole game. Right now, only beaten out by the Sigil of Exigence by Grey Knights because that is free movement in your opponent's turn, which is even more bonkers than good
And
movement in your
that
turn.
and that thing can actually win you games. If somebody screws up after you've told them that, you're just like, well, I guess I already explained it to you.
Yeah,
And all of a sudden you move at the end of the shooting phase, right behind something, and go, I'm about to shoot and assault you next turn to just
yeah,
basically ruin your backfield. That's such a big deal.
it's so good.
What is the GK's toughest matchup and how do you play it? I think everybody's toughest matchup is students. Uh, and you play it by move blocking the slow stuff, killing the faster stuff, and scoring your points and not overextending because they will definitely uh out trash you because they
So
have
you,
cheap
so you,
things.
so you didn't even answer that for Grey Knights. You just answered that for everybody. Like that's how you beat Nits,
Yeah.
which is legit. Like that's a legit
Well,
answer,
and it's
obviously.
still really hard, you know what I mean? Like it's just a really difficult match. So it's not like it's not easy. I'm not like, hey, this is, you do this and you win every time versus Nids. No, they're unbelievably tough army. They're the number one army, but you have to go in with a plan. You know what I mean? Of at least how you're gonna do it. Because if you're like, hey, I'm just gonna bang heads with Nids, and you're like, oh, weird, they're super cheap data sheets crushed my not super cheap data sheets. Well,
Weird.
no way.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, letting you guys know we're gonna be wrapping up pretty soon, but I do want to go into some other questions I've got for you, Brad.
hit me,
So these are a little bit more generalized, but I want to know what is your most memorable game like ever?
dude. I've been playing for 22 years and I have brain problems. I can't remember all these things.
All right, what's the most memorable game from the last 6 months?
Now, I'll give you a good game. Nick and I played one of my favorite games. Nick Narvati and I played one of my favorite games of all time in the semifinals of 3 LVOs ago, um, where we both played the exact same list and we had a super technical game, but it was super fun because we were basically like, I'm trying to do this. Perfect. Okay, cool. Move on with your life. I'm trying to do this. So we played like one of the highest level games I've ever played, and it was super fun. And we didn't have to worry about either person trying to scam each other. Out of but fun games, well, I'm occasionally, yeah, I like your outfit. But out of the things that were fantastic, I don't even know if I can say this on this one. John and I played against each other in doubles when I may or may not have had several of the beverages at
I'm
Motor City
amazed
last
it's
night.
taken this long for us to bring up alcohol.
I tried to keep it real. I was screaming to everyone that I was the captain, and you had to stare at me. The next day, I had done some stuff. I may or may not have tried to pole dance on the stream equipment. And next day for the singles event, the first 10 minutes of announcements were just Brad Chester things not to do. So please don't do this. So it was a
I mean,
fantastic
every law, every rule exists because somebody did that thing. Like, if there's a specific law in effect, it's because
game.
somebody did that exact
Oh,
thing.
the best part was is they do this string of announcements that are totally focused on me, and I of course was somewhere else getting wine, so I walk in with a full glass of wine, and they're like, "What? Were
Did you
you
not?
really not here for
Did
this?"
you
I'm
not?
like, "What, guys? What's going on?"
That's
Um,
hilarious. Uh,
I
uh,
love playing 40K though, man. You know what? In memorable things though, make your memorable moments by realizing that you can't even, no matter what you're pissed about, you can't bitch about it to anybody that doesn't even play 40K. Because if I walk up and go, all right, I was playing, uh, me and one of my other middle-aged friends were playing with our toy soldiers, and this is why I'm super mad about it. The other person's like, go fuck yourself. What are you, insane?
yeah,
Stop telling me this.
yeah. It is interesting to take it into perspective of like all the other problems that are out there, and it's like if that's actually, I would take it a little further and say that if those are the problems that are making you mad, you probably in a pretty good spot in your life,
Your
honestly.
life's awesome if that's your
Yeah,
biggest
seriously.
problem.
Yeah. And then I want to ask you, this is kind of a two-parter. What's your favorite AeldarI model? And then what's your favorite model? Just
I'm not a modeler, so I don't take pride in any models, so it's hard for me on that.
okay. All right.
Uh,
What's your favorite little bit of AeldarI lore then?
oh, I love so much about their lore. In all seriousness, one, you should be able to always win an argument with anybody from Eldar because of the fact that you can always go, "Hey, raise your hand if you weren't so weird. You made a dark god of lust and sex. You broke the sky. Like, quit it." Uh,
Yeah.
but I love the Infinity Circuit. I really love. I love the fact that Eldar. If you've never read the fluff on this, Eldar are so crazy, basically, and they're so intense that they said that the smallest, because they did this is from the Inquisitor books and stuff like that, where
Right.
the Eldari experience everything 1,000 times as much as a human does, like psychologically feeling the everything that they do. So they experience the the best of joys and the worst of sadness. Um, and the other thing about them is their physiology. They basically are like Anne Rice vampires. They're so fast and weird. They say that when you watch Eldari walk in person, it's actually freaky uh, because of the way that they move. Like it's
Oh,
so much different than humans.
oh, they're like so lithe and fast, or
Yeah, they like just move weird because of the way they're put together. They're
huh.
super agile and fast. And so like when you watch them, it's like it, in a bunch of books they list them as off-putting when you watch them move because it's almost like watching stop animation. You know
Oh,
what I mean?
weird.
Where yeah.
Uh,
I love it. I watched a lot of shoes and get
yeah.
music I drink about.
I was gonna say that might have been Brad.
It was for sure me.
Yeah. Uh, so just to wrap up, I'll wait for a few more questions, but while I do that, so both Deathwatch and Grey Knights can play into AeldarI by, first of all, play your mission, play your list. That is just, you should be doing that every
Think
game,
ahead. So much
regardless.
think ahead. You have to plan ahead. The army's faster than you are.
And then, oh, carry on, please.
No, just it's with a lot of armies though. You have to get your plan of where you're going to go. Don't overextend. Look for opportunities to get shots. Do not underestimate the power of trash shots.
Yeah, Stormbolters again. It feels so bad into like Nids, but it feels so good into AeldarI or Sisters or anything T3. Like your Stormbolters suddenly
I am
feel
terrified of them.
amazing. Yeah.
I'm literally terrified of them. An early push, like when you put your blocks up and your trash, and you're trying to do your move blocks, you're trying to take your stranglehold. Those 20 Stormbolter shots and a smite just are the worst. You know what I mean? They're just like, ugh, you're just picking up random crap just constantly. It's such a big deal. So the thing is have a plan, guys. Have a plan. It doesn't have to be a great plan, but do a game plan, choose secondaries that go with that game plan, and then stick to your game plan. Don't like you do the what was the gladiator where he's like, if you find yourself by yourself,
Yeah.
don't worry because you weren't Elysium. So
it's too late. You're
that's what
already
happened.
dead.
Yeah, but if you find yourself in the middle of nowhere with one of your big units, well, you're dead. You just are. You know what I mean? If you're fighting on your opponent's side of walls by yourself, well, you're gonna lose the game, man.
Yeah.
It's just if he keeps shooting you with 90% of his army against 15-20% that you keep just dishing out to him. Well, by the turn 5, you're like, well, what happened? You're like, well, a lot of your guys died. So for no reason. Again, ask yourself the question, am I scoring points? Am I denying points? Am I setting up for the next turn? If the answer is no, take your damn hand off the model and do something else.
There you go. That is huge. I'm gonna be doing that in my games now too. Like, don't even move them until you know exactly what you need to be doing with them. And then of course, premeasure, right?
Yes.
Hey, speaking of which, did you play, so 22 years, so you played in the edition where they didn't allow you to measure anything?
Oh yeah.
Was that
There
a
was
thing?
for
Ugh,
most of 40K, I haven't been able to pre-measure.
that honestly
We had,
sounds awful. That
we had
one thing
get
alone might make it so that I would never play the game.
well, you could tell all the people that took basic trig and stuff though. So everybody's just making triangles to figure out where you are. So you couldn't measure it, but you knew how far certain pieces were in the game. So I
Huh.
would figure out based on other things that I could. So I'm like, you're here. I know how far it is from here to here, and I know how far this is that I can
So
triangulate
you just,
that.
okay. So you're doing
And
geometry just to move your models?
well,
Fun.
the best part is you used to have guess weapons. The ultimate character sniping in the game back in the day with guess weapons was just on purpose guessing wrong. Like if you literally were here and then there's a model right in front of you and you're like, oh, I'm gonna shoot this guy right here that I can legally declare. But I'm gonna guess 38 and I'm gonna hit your character right in his face because
So
oh
you
no,
fire away past what you're actually declaring and
yeah,
like
there's a guy like
hit behind a
3 inches
wall or something?
away because you can guess anything you want. You know what I mean? You just do it on that line. So you're just like, yeah, I'm shooting at this with this guardsman, but weirdly enough, I'm gonna go 38 back there and pick off your commissar. So that was
Hilarious.
that was literally the most dangerous character sniping in the game. Was purposely saying the wrong number for guess weapons.
Well, Brad,
Uh,
I think it's about time to close down the stream. We haven't gotten any more questions. I think we went through absolutely everything and missed nothing, which is amazing. Love that efficiency. Um, Congratulations by the way, again on your win at the Rock Top Super Major. So you went 6-0, right?
8-0.
8-0. Wow. I think I looked at your run. I don't think you scored less than 90 the whole time.
It was so hard. I played, I think, 6 of the top 7 at the end. So my run was difficult. I played 5 Tyranids. So
Ah,
I played 5 out of 8 games were against Tyranids. Then I played a Tau player,
well, at
and
least you know your game plan into nids.
yeah, it was rough. It was
That's
just
awesome.
rough.
All right,
But in the
well,
end, love this
yeah,
army.
we both have lives and things to go do. I have to go slave away for the man, and Brad needs to go throw out more knowledge bombs over on Art of War, which, by the way, there is a link down below if you want to know more about Art of War. I know there are a lot of new players that come to my channel, so they do a lot of coaching. They have lots of videos. Great. Nick's doing a huge series right now about reading the board state, which I have found absolutely fascinating. Brad's on there all the time. They have content at least once every day. Their Facebook group and their Discord are also super active. So check them out. Brad, thank you so much. I look forward to talking to you again in the future and sharing a drink with you one of these days when I can actually travel to tournaments. So,
Love it.
um, thank you very much. And guys, don't forget, call your mothers.